But to be a unique self means that the attention of the infinite differentiates uniquely through me. And to be a lover is to clarify your own attention, which is to clarify your eros, to clarify your desire. Because desire is where I place my attention. So when I clarify my desire, I clarify my attention. So to be a lover is to see with God's eyes. So we're here to articulate the new story of value. We're here to pay attention to attention, to place our attention on attention, which means to love attention, which means to affirm that attention is an expression of my personhood, which is an expression of my desire. Attention is the natural incarnation of my eros. Attention is my right, can't be stolen. We're here in this time between worlds. We're here in this time between stories, responding to the meta crisis and knowing that crisis is an evolutionary driver, that our crisis is a birth, that as things fall apart, they also can fall together, that emergency can generate emergence, that when the vessels break, in the language of the lineage of Solomon, there's new possibility. The original Hebrew word for breaking is shvira. The original Hebrew word for breaking is shever, shever. And shever means breaking, and it means nourishment. Vayar Yaakov, and Jacob saw ki yesh shever b'Mitzrayim, that there's promise, there's nourishment, there's possibility. So when the breaking happens, it's either going to be a breakdown or something will open in our hearts and we'll be able to see more clearly than we ever have before. And it will become not a breakdown, but a breakthrough. And that's the feeling of ein shalem milev shavur. And there's nothing more whole than a broken heart. And so in this moment of metacrisis, we don't move to denial and we don't move to a doomer position, but we move to respond. To respond by telling a new story of value, knowing and stay close, right? We tell a new story of value because we know that that new story allows us to generate a new reality. And the meta crisis emerges from the broken plot lines, the broken structures of the old reality. To the precise extent that the story told in modernity was accurate and beautiful, it birthed the dignities of modernity. But to the precise extent that there were plot lines missing or broken, for example, the plot line of value. The plot line of value got lost. We lost the thread of the story of value. We thought we could assume value even as we denied it. We thought we could make intrinsic value, the good, the true, and the beautiful, an axiom, even if we would undercut their roots and claim, wink, wink, that they're really just made up. We thought we could get away with that, and we did in modernity. But post-modernity called the lie out and said, no, you're making these stories up. There is no story of value. And once there's no story of value, then all that's left is separate selves lost in rivalrous conflict governed by win-lose metrics, generating fragile, complicated system without inherent allurement between the parts, because there is no inherent allurement between parts. It's all contrived. It's all random, right? It's all a reductive, materialist, random cosmos without telos, without purpose, without direction. And of course, that's not the case. Of course, that defies the inherent nature of science. But that became the dogma, and that dogma was invested in the apparatuses of power and generated all the fragilities of modernity and all the 15 vectors of the metacrisis that threaten us with either the death of humanity or the death of our humanity. So what do we need to do? We need to reweave the plot line. We need to retell the story. We need to reclaim the thread. We need to revalue value itself. So I want to just kind of go slow and gentle. And I want to do something which I think is kind of wildly important. It's a change that actually does quite literally change everything. And I want to try and share it with you in several stages, step at a time, and add a new dimension to the story of value that really opens everything up in a new way. Who's ready? Are we ready? Are we ready? Are we ready? Are we ready to play a larger game? Are we ready to participate in the evolution of culture and consciousness, which is the evolution of love? So it's wildly wondrous to be with you today. And David's about to read the code. But before we read the code, I want to just do a practice. And in chant, as opposed to meditation, right, in meditation, we place attention on awareness. And our topic today is going to be attention. In chant, we place attention on allurement. We feel the pulse, the eros, right? The allurement of cosmos. So with your permission, just to open up some gates together as we're here in this revolution, articulating the new story of value in response to the meta crisis, let's practice. Let's just chant a little bit. David, give us a code, brother. Give us a code. Here we go.
Eros is the placing of attention. The placing of attention generates reality. The placing of attention is the ultimate creative act and the ultimate moral act. Reality emerges from the infinite placing attention on finitude. Attention and devotion are joined at the hip. To be the receiver of well-placed attention and to place attention well makes life self-evidently good, true, and beautiful. Placing attention is a first principle and first value of cosmos. And evolution evolves through differentiation and integration, which is the placing of attention. Evolution is the evolution of attention, which is the evolution of love. And I'll just do it one more time for us here. Eros is the placing of attention. The placing of attention generates reality. The placing of attention is the ultimate creative act and the ultimate moral act. Reality itself emerges from the infinite placing attention on finitude. Attention and devotion are joined at the hip. To be the receiver of well-placed attention and to place attention well makes life self-evidently good, true, and beautiful. Placing attention is a first value and first principle of cosmos. Evolution evolves through differentiation and integration, which is the placing of attention. Evolution is the evolution of attention, which is the evolution of love. And I place my attention back on you, Dr. Marc.
Thank you, David. So let's find our way. Let's place our attention. We're at this new moment in society in which the act of attention hijacking is the primary movement of the new robber barons, of the new oligarchs, of the new techno-totalitarians. The theft of attention, stolen focus, stolen attention, as Johann Hari calls it in his book by that name, is the basic movement of the mainstream structures of society, which has enfolded, enwrapped, engulfed society, not by providing it tools. The internet is not a set of tools. That's a mistake. The internet's not a set of tools. The internet is an immersive environment in which the next generation is being raised, which is based on the radical scattering of attention, to borrow a term from Nicholas Carr in his 2011 book, The Shallows. And there's been this entire leading edge literature, and Nicholas Carr began the conversation, although he pulled the punch, as I'll point out, in his book, The Shallows, and then he wrote another book called The Glass Cage. Then he wrote another book, which is a collection of his blogs. His blogs are called Rough Type. He collected his blogs and he put them in a book called Utopia is Creepy. And he's describing essentially the hijacking of attention. Our colleagues Tristan and Asa at the Center for Humane Technology have placed their attention on the robbing of attention. Much has been written about B.F. Fogg's and his persuasive technology laboratory in Silicon Valley, which has taught generations of app designers how to hijack attention. And the word used is how to maximize engagement. But engagement is actually a euphemism, and euphemism is one of the core strategies of techno-totalitarianism, and it's a euphemism for addiction. And addiction is the consistent and obsessive hijacking of attention from the discomfort or the emptiness of ordinary life, which one doesn't have or loses the capacity to sit through until it gets to fullness, since we can't actually hold our attention on the actual experience of life in order to walk through it sufficiently to access its depth and its pleasure and its potency and its potentiality and its possibility, we get discomfited by its pain, and so we turn our attention. And the consistent turning of that attention is called addiction. The internet is designed to scatter attention. It's designed to interrupt plot lines. It's designed with multiple links in every sentence that don't allow you to enter into the placing of attention and the depth that emerges from the artistic act of true engagement. And that disruption of attention generates the shallows. The shallows is the opposite of depth. And Carr has written about it, and Shoshana Zuboff's book, Surveillance Capitalism, addresses it in a different way, right? A more complex book, right? A book by Brett Fleischman, Re-Engineering Humanity, addresses the same issue. Doug Rushkoff has talked about it in multiple ways. There's a veritable literature, right, on this distraction of attention. But if you notice, the techplex is not paying any attention to the literature accusing it of hijacking attention. Why? Because the literature that accuses the techplex of hijacking attention has not given any compelling reason why attention shouldn't be hijacked. In other words, it's not against the law. Advertisers have always sought to attract attention. But true, this is an immersive environment, and true, it's micro-targeting as opposed to the old broadband advertising of television, and certainly that which emerged from the printing press, which is generalized writing. And also, when writing becomes advertising, it's generalized broadband advertising, which is different than the micro-targeted advertising that emerges out of the techplex, which uses machine intelligence to essentially develop a personality profile, a voodoo doll of you, which it crafts and sculpts by reality mining your data and then turning your dark data, which is all the ways that you unconsciously place your attention into a personality profile in order to micro-target you. So that's true. It's true that it's not the same as the old advertising, but essentially the techplex says, so what? When technology advances and ways of attracting attention advance, and it's a free market. And the same Nir Eyal, who's a favorite son of the techplex, who wrote a book, who's a student of B.F. Fogg's at the Persuasive Laboratory, right in Silicon Valley, right? Nir Eyal wrote a book called Hooked. Hooked meaning the purpose of the technology is to addict you. He wrote another book called something like Indistractable, meaning just turn it off. Nir Eyal says, what's the problem? Right? We're trying to hook you and attract your attention. You have free autonomy as an end user. Turn it off. What's the problem, says the techplex, with stealing attention? Right? And they shrug it off. And so writers like Hari and the whole band say we have to value attention. But why? And this is very deep. You see, neither Zuboff, nor Hari, nor Rushkoff, nor Carr, right, nor Harari, right, nor, and I could go through the list of people who discuss this issue, none of them assert what needs to be asserted in order to be morally outraged and astonished by the hijacking of attention. And what is that? We have to actually affirm that attention is a first principle and first value. Before anything else, attention is a first principle and first value of cosmos. If attention's not a first principle and first value, that is part of the very value proposition intrinsically laced, suffusing all of cosmos, then the hijacking of attention is not a problem. Does everyone get that? It's very deep, and I want to get this. It's like so deep. Okay, so let's go slow with me. Okay, and I want to try and see if we can unpack this in a couple of steps. And I want to get to the essence in about 6-7 minutes. But first, I want to kind of set up the context. So let's start with attention at the human level. Let's say in pre-modernity, the pre-modern world. So in the pre-modern world, there's a lot of writing about attention, and there's actually a writer named Kreiner who just wrote a book called The Wandering Mind, which is one of those books that critiques the modern loss of attention and compares it to the medieval period, where the monks, for example, were very careful to guard their attention. But why were the monks careful to guard their attention? What were they using their attention for? Why did the monks, right, and the priests and the imams and the different religious practitioners in the caliphates, right? Why did everyone basically take attention to be a great value? Because it was through attention that you placed your mind on the mind of God. It was through attention that you discerned the will of God. And particularly, it was the elite who were tasked with merging with the divine, with disclosing the will of the divine, and with sharing that will with the masses. And what they were supposed to do was to practice, to meditate, to pray, right, to fast, to dance, to whirling dervish, right, to place their full attention on the divine in order to access the nature of reality. Does everyone get that? So that was pre-modernity. So pre-modernity was about attention, and it was that placing attention on the divine in order to be obedient, in order to appropriately surrender, in order to know the divine will, in order to hear the divine voice, in order to interpret sacred texts, in order to achieve unio mystica, mystical union with the divine. What happens then? Now stay close. You with me, everybody? Who's together? We together? We ready to go? Let's go now. Okay, now we go. Okay, now it's big now. Okay, now it's big. So then we go to modernity, right, friends? So what happens in modernity? So in modernity, attention turns away from God. God's still invited to the party on the guest list, but there's a turning of attention from heaven to earth, from God to the human being. When you look at Michelangelo's creation scene, and you see the image of God, and you see the hands meeting in the image of Adam, Adam is not surrendering. Adam is filled with Eros. He's filled with aliveness. He's filled with dignity. He's gorgeously formed. We naturally place attention on his beauty, on his power and his potential. So there's a turning of attention in modernity to nature, to the natural world, to the third person perspective in art and in science and in moral philosophy. We begin to look from the third person perspective, and we generate universal human rights, and we generate the scientific method, and we generate new forms of measurement, Kepler and Galileo, which are new forms of paying attention. It's a different kind of, it's an active attention, which generates new gnosis. That's the movement of attention in modernity. And the importance of attention is taken as a given because it generates science. And we turn to the human being and we move to psychology. We look at our own inner workings and how they operate. And Freud begins to dissect the human being much like one would a steam engine. But something gets lost because as modernity progresses and as science progresses and as the exterior placings of attention and methodologies for placing of attention get ever more sophisticated, interior technologies begin to break down. Value gets lost as a plot line in Cosmos. Attention becomes but a methodology. And along comes postmodernity, and postmodernity says, actually, all of these stories including the story of science, including the stories of the Western Enlightenment, including the stories of universal human rights, are really just stories. They're really just contrived. Even facts are really contrived values. Actually, the world is without a plot line. There are no first values and first principles, which means there's no telos, which means there's no plot line, which means there's no thread to follow. So in essence, what postmodernity is saying, now stay close, my friends, there's really nothing to pay attention to. Did you get that? There's nothing to pay attention to. And that incipient sense of there's nothing to pay attention to is exactly what Camus talks about in that famous first line in the existentialist novel of Camus, The Stranger, which I often point out. He says, forget about psychology. All right, strangers are we, errants at the gates of our own psyche, writes George Steiner. And Camus says, you know the opening line, he says, mother died today, or was it yesterday? And it's mother dying should grab my attention. It should arrest my attention. Mother died. But that can't arrest my attention because it doesn't ultimately matter. You only pay attention when it matters. And when the world is said to no longer be constructed from what matters, but it's reduced to matter, then nothing matters. Then there's nothing to pay attention to. Wow. And so the internet emerges, starts in the 70s, the first iterations, 80s, the 90s, it really begins to emerge, right? It literally parallels postmodernity. And the internet is the exteriorization, the exterior expression of the postmodern mind. And the postmodern mind says there's no plot line. The postmodern mind would never do what Hawthorne describes in Sleepy Hollow. You'd never lean back against a tree and kind of get lost in the depth of a plot line of reading, right? Get lost in the inward space of meaning, create flow states of attention in order to disclose the depths of reality, because there's no depth of reality to be disclosed. And plot lines don't matter, and authors don't matter, and unique forms of attention don't matter, right? Which is why Kelly writes that we don't need authorship anymore. Let's just have all the information. It's all exterior information. So the internet is about the scattering of attention. It's about the interrupting of attention because there's nothing to place attention on. And so therefore, the conceivers of the internet, the techno-totalitarians, right, who speak a kind of set of liberal slogans, but who are actually techno-authoritarian, that is to say, imposing a reductionist materialist dogma without having been elected, without actually having been chosen to teach, but they're actually encoding the immersive environment with the premise that there are no plot lines, and that your attention can be stolen in every second. And actually, your iPhone is built, the entire thing's built to steal your attention. You ever notice that as someone is texting you, the little 3 dots come up? Let's say when you're on WhatsApp, you see someone's texting you. Why? To steal your attention. And it says read or not read, right? Lights up in blue or not blue, whether it's your text message or whether it's WhatsApp, in order to demand that you return the message. And when you get on LinkedIn, right, it tells you what your circle of following is. And we have likes and we have views. And the entire internet is constructed, right, to appeal not to the depth placing of attention, but to the surface vying for pseudo-erotic attention, because there's no genuine experience of the depth of attention. In other words, Eros, or the erotic universe, is the genuine placing of attention. The pornographic universe is the hijacking of attention. And social media is an expression of the pornographic universe. So let's see if we can catch this. It's deep. So what we need to do is, if we want to object to attention, the reason the techno-feudalists who are governing the attention economy ignore the objections, right, of this new cadre of writers who are screaming, you're attention thieves, you're a robber baron stealing attention, is because they're saying, what's wrong with stealing attention? And you can only arouse moral astonishment and outrage if there's been a violation of value. When we see value violated, we see George Floyd killed, we're outraged at the violation of value and we storm into the street. If there hasn't been an actual violation of value, we're not moved, right? And so, for example, Johann Hari calls for an attention rebellion and everyone yawns because Johann Hari in his entire book, which is, where is it, right? It's on my desk here someplace, right? I can't find it right now, but is an entire book which is about the stealing of attention. No place in the entire book does he ever tell us what value, what intrinsic value of cosmos expressed at the human level is being violated by the stealing of attention. Meaning, Hari says we have to value attention. He says it time and time again, but he refuses to declare attention as a value. So unless I actually affirm that attention is a first principle and first value of cosmos, right, there's no conversation. The conversation doesn't get off the ground. So let's do it right now together, okay? Do we have a drum roll? Who's got a drum roll? Do we have a drum roll in the house? Let's get a drum roll. Let's get a drum roll. We need a drum roll here. Okay, let's get a drum roll in the house. This is big. This is huge. And this is important. Okay, this is huge and important. Cha. Right? Let's now affirm in this moment, right? Attention is a first principle and first value of cosmos. That's what it is. And actually, the infinite, and we call God in cosmorotic humanism, and by God, right, the God you don't believe in doesn't exist. God is mystery. God can't be named. But we actually try and name the force that's beyond, right? Upon which, as Henry Miller said, right, you have to place all of your energy on the forces beyond that move through you. And only that is the real business of living. So those forces beyond that move within, right, that larger movement that lives us, that's where we have to place our attention. Now, that quality of placing attention actually is the quality of the infinite turning to finitude. It's what Blake meant when Blake said eternity is in love with the productions of time. Eternity is in love with the productions of time. See, to be in love is to place attention. That's what it means to be in love. It's so beautiful. To be in love means I'm willing to bracket myself and place attention on you. And when I place attention on you, I'm in devotion. My attention expresses itself as devotion. I'm turning towards you. I'm bracketing the self. I'm powerful. I'm not turning towards you because I have a utilitarian need or an instrumental telos or a superficial goal. I'm turning towards you in love. And so in the image of Luria, the interior scientist who incepted the Renaissance through the Lurianic mystery schools that live on the periphery of the Renaissance, and read Edel's book, Kabbalah in Italy, which alludes to this, although it doesn't name it specifically. Luria talks about this divine act. And by divine, I'm going to call divine the infinite intimate. The name of God in cosmorotic humanism, our new story of value, the infinite intimate steps back, brackets herself in order to turn towards finitude. That's what love means. The parent brackets herself to turn towards her child. The lover brackets himself, herself, to turn towards his friend, her friend, his beloved, her beloved. The bracketing of self to place attention on other is the primary act of Eros. And it's only when you place attention that gnosis, that knowing emerges. And knowing is all sorts of knowing. Every form of knowing comes from the placing of attention. I was reading last night this book by D.H. Lawrence. It's actually a collection of essays of D.H. Lawrence, a kind of unknown collection. And he writes here, he says, everything depends on the amount of true, sincere religious concentration you can bring to bear. And D.H. Lawrence is not known for his religion, And he says, an act of pure attention, an act of pure attention, if you are capable of it, will bring its own answer. Everything is about the placing of attention. Attention is the realization that something other than me is real and is worthy of my concentrated attention, of the placing of my heart. And the original Hebrew word for attention is sim lev, S-I-M, second word, L-E-V, the placing of the heart, which is the placing of attention. And when we say the sexual models the erotic, which is a core principle in one of the core works of cosmoerotic humanism, which is called A Return to Eros, when we say the sexual models the erotic, what we mean is that sex discloses the nature of Eros. But of course, there's 12 billion years of Eros before there's any sex. Sex encapsulates, models, incarnates Eros. But Eros, we want to live erotically in every dimension of life, and to live erotically is to place attention. To live pornographically is to have attention hijacked. And the pornographic universe is about the hijacking of attention, while the erotic universe is about the placing of attention. And when we say the sexual models the erotic, what is sex if not the placing of attention? Right? That's what it is. Now, the pseudo-erotic placing of attention is when my attention is stolen by newness, novelty. Novelty attracts my attention. That's the beginning. That's an original erotic moment. But then Eros deepens, Eros discloses her true face. When I actually bring my attention to bear, it's not that the new breast or the new belly, right, or the new posterior or the new shoulder or the new bare legs capture my attention because I've never seen them before. So it's a shiny new object, right? It's the pseudo-eros of genuinely placed attention, which is the pseudo-eros of novelty. No. Erotic attention is when I can see with new eyes, not when I see new things. To see something new and to constantly have that newness replaced by something else new is the demarcating characteristic of the pornographic universe. But to see with new eyes, that's the essential quality of the erotic universe. I see you for the very first time, even though I've seen you 1,000 times. And each time I place my attention on you, you're actually different. You're physiologically different. You are neuroscientifically different, but you're also, from the perspective of your depth interior, you're different. You're new. You're emergent. And when I see you, I allow myself to fall into the rapture of radical amazement again and again, and I fall in love with you again and again. That's the sexual models, the erotic. Sex as a model, not of Eros, not of pornography, aka the pornographic universe, but the erotic universe. So if in-depth reading is erotic, social media is pornographic. You get the distinction? To liberate attention is to liberate the quality of Eros, which moves towards intimacy, which is my nature. And attention is not generic. Attention's always unique. You know, I have this book here, and maybe we can put it in the chat box. It's available now. You can get it now on Amplify. Here we go. You can get it on Amplify. It'll be on Amazon, I think, in the beginning of April. I think you can pre-order on Amazon. And it's our book called First Principles and First Values. And it's the kind of the tip of the spear of the next stage of the Great Library. It was written by David J. Temple. Yay, Myra, you got yours. That's awesome, right? It was written by David J. Temple, who's a pseudo-anonymous author, representing myself and and Zach Stein. And in this book, Ken Wilber joined us. And in this book, there's a set of interior science equations. Interior science equations. And these interior science equations, which appear, just for fun, on page 168, right? So they took me about 20 years. And they are 18 interior science equations, which express the first principles, the evolving first principles and first values of cosmos. And so one of the equations is about uniqueness. And I'm not going to read you the entire equation, but uniqueness is the unique capacity to allure attention and the unique capacity to place attention. Does that make sense? In other words, I am a unique quality of attention. Now stay with me. It gets wildly wonderful and wildly beautiful. I'm a unique capacity of attention, which means that infinity sees uniquely through me. It's crazy beautiful. To be a unique self, which is one of the core structures of cosmoerotic humanism, that I'm actually a unique self. I'm not going to go into that now. There's a book called Your Unique Self, which discusses this at length. But to be a unique self means that the attention of the infinite differentiates uniquely through me. That's what it means to be a unique self. So I am divinity's unique prism of attention, which means that infinity, the infinite intimate, can only see a dimension of reality through me. Which is why to love God, right? There's all this discussion about loving God. Who loves God? Let's get real. Why would you love God? What does it mean to love God? To love God means to let God see through your eyes. Do you get that, everybody? Right? To love God means to let God see through your eyes. And to be a lover is to clarify your own attention, which is to clarify your eros, to clarify your desire. Because desire is where I place my attention. Does that make sense? Desire is the focus. That's what desire is. Desire equals that which I value, upon which I place my attention. So when I clarify my desire, I clarify my attention. So to be a lover is to see with God's eyes, meaning with clarified attention. Now, it's even more. Let's go deeper. One last step. So when I love you, for example, when I place my attention on you, a unique dimension of me shows up to you and to me that doesn't show up with anyone else. So when I'm talking to Andrew, which I'm about to do, and I'm talking to my friend Andrew Sweeney, who came to study with us at our seminar this past summer. He's a beautiful man. When I talk to Andrew, so by placing my attention on Andrew, a unique dimension of Mark shows up when he talks to Andrew, and a unique dimension of Andrew shows up when he talks to Mark. So when I'm in love with my friend, with my beloved of any kind, and our love lists are too short, we need longer love lists. When I'm in love with you, it's because I see you, I've placed my attention on you. So love is a perception, I see you, number one. But number two, I'm in love with you because you evoke, through the quality of attention you evoke from me, you evoke a dimension of me that doesn't appear in any other way. Right? Isn't that gorgeous? Let's just go the next step with me. So infinity generates the multiplicities of finitude, which are multiplicitous uniquenesses. And I just made up that word multiplicitous, or maybe it exists, I'm not sure. But right, infinity, right, generates multiplicitous uniquenesses, meaning billions of unique selves, because infinity, divinity, infinite divinity, right? What Henry Miller called those things beyond that move through us, infinity experiences shocking self-recognition through you. When infinity feels your placing of attention on him, her, infinity appears in a new way that she doesn't appear in any other way. And so reality is the infinite placing attention on finitude. Blake and infinity's in love with the productions of time, and finitude placing attention on infinity, and both mutually generate each other. Wow. Both create each other. It's not a creator creates creation. Creator creates creation, and creation creates creator, which is why the Zohar, the 13th century book of radiance, begins by saying, Breshit bara Elohim. In the beginning, God created. The Zohar rereads that, Breshit bara Elohim. In the beginning, we create God. Right? And as we generate through our attention the disclosure, the revelation of the infinite that appears in a way it couldn't appear in any other way. That's attention. And actually, attention begins with subatomic particles placing attention on each other. And it goes all through the world of matter. And attention goes through the intra-attention mechanisms of the biosphere until attention breaks out at the human level in unique levels of human attention, which we'll talk about perhaps next week. And actually, evolution is the evolution of attention. And the evolution of attention is the evolution of love. And we go through all the stages of human experience until we get to postmodernity, in which we lose the thread of the plot line. We lose the thread of the evolution of attention because exterior technologies, with their ability to place artificial attention, surveillance, tracking, a planetary stack, eyes on you all the time, a kind of superficial attention, which is the opposite of a loving providence. And the actual storyline of the inherent value of reality breaks down. And so the win-lose metrics takes over and attention is stolen and hijacked. And writers call vainly for an attention rebellion. And they say we should value attention, and they scream till they're hoarse. We should value attention, but they refuse to proclaim attention as a first value and first principle. So we're here to articulate the new story of value. We're here to pay attention, to place our attention on attention, which means to love attention, which means to affirm that attention is an expression of my personhood, which is an expression of my desire. Attention is the natural incarnation of my eros. Attention is my right. It can't be stolen. Wow. So we're reclaiming attention. We're placing our heart.